to another episode of Behind the Green Screen. As you can see, there's no green screen behind me. And for this episode, um, well, let me backtrack a minute. You know, I always have a story behind what comes from these episodes. So originally, I was going to do this episode on a book that I have in my library that I bought back in 2005 about Zora Neale Hurston. But I'm going to save that for another episode because Zora Neale Hurston is one of my favorite writers. I think she's my out of the Harlem Renaissance. She, and it's not because she was a female; it's because she was so sassy. Right? When I read her essays and I read her books, there's an element of sassiness that just attracts that I've been attracted to since the first time I learned about her, and then I listened to the audiobook, and I talked about this in another Behind the Green Screen episode, where I used to listen to audiobooks, and I listened to Their Eyes Were Watching God. So I got a chance to meet her niece back in 2005, and I was going to go over that book, but I'm going to save that for another episode, right? So what's coming out, or what came? Let me say this right. The reason behind this episode is because lately I haven't been able to stay off of Threads. And it's kind of weird and odd because I never really considered any kind of uh, uh, activity, like constant daily activity on Threads. I'm an Instagram person. And the reason why is because I have fine tuned the algorithm for my feed. So I get nothing but happy stuff. I mean, not all of it is happy, but all of it is relevant to stuff that I am into. And also other people I'm connected to or friends with, what they're into or who I follow, and all of that good feel vibration kind of stuff. I have that all fine tuned to my Instagram feed. My Thread feed is another matter entirely. It's like the wild west. And I haven't really figured out how to fine tune it yet. But I'm always on there, sort of interacting with people, commenting on stuff. People post stupid stuff, and I'm like, what's your point exactly? Stuff like that. I have that kind of interactions, or, I'll give advice. And one of the things that I have noticed on my feed are constant references to AI, constant use of AI. I go to LinkedIn, and there are articles about how AI are basically taking away the tech jobs, and it's just AI all over the place. You're smacked with it, and it's to the point where if you see something on social media, there's an immediate sort of discussion that takes place in which, oh, this is fake. No, this is real. And we're unable to distinguish reality or what's real from AI. And it has everybody discombobulated because we don't know what to trust, right? We don't know what to trust. And so now we're getting down to the point where we have to look for clues that let us know that this was AI generated. Now there's signs that it's clearly not generated, like things that are so outrageously, presented that you have no doubt in your mind that it was AI created. But what about those deep fakes, right? Um, right, quite recently, reporter James Acosta had an interview with an AI generated individual who had died in the Parkland school shooting. And his parents sort of gave permission to use AI and his image to sort of answer questions from Jim Acosta, which was really, really weird. If I'm going to give any type of opinion to that, that was hella weird, hella weird. And I don't know why the use of that was newsworthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, how was that interview newsworthy when the responses are basically, they're not from the person at all because he's gone. He's not here anymore. So, how can a computer take the place of a living, breathing human being responding to questions? It's sort of, it was just I don't, it was disturbing. To me, it was disturbing. And I'm sure a lot of people, kind of felt the same way, that it was creepy. I think their words would be like, it was creepy, or, stuff like that. But I just find it concerning because there seems to be this rush to AI without really slowing down and realizing the consequences of it. And where I see it in an area that's disappointing and close to my heart is in universities and colleges, in writing courses, in which students are using AI instead of their critical thinking skills to create papers that are subpar. We are, to me, it seems, and this is not just for students, it's for professors as well, who are basically farming out tasks that they should own and do themselves. It just seems like this level of laziness and mediocrity has sort of ratcheted up tenfold. And when I used to teach, and I taught as an adjunct instructor in writing for 12 years for a variety of colleges and universities. And even back then, I was sort of I discouraged students from using Wikipedia. And because I said you can't trust it. It's a source that can't be trusted. I would advise students, if you needed something, a jump off point for your research, scroll down to the bottom of the wiki entry and then look for the sources that are used and then follow those sources, because 9 times out of 10 is credible sources that are used for the article, which is it's just weird in itself, because if you look at any wiki entry, right? You can't trust the entry itself, but you can trust the sources that were used for the entry. And I know that sounds back asswards, but that was the stance of me as a writing instructor and a lot of professors at the time. Now, I taught between 2009 to 2021. And it was the professional stance that we should not encourage students to use Wikipedia because it is unreliable. Any idiot can write a wiki entry, including this idiot. But you can use it to sort of help you with, if you're feeling overwhelmed by research, by all means, scroll down. But run your sources by me, because I still need to check them. We all know, and if you don't know, when it comes to credible sources, we always, us old writing professors who didn't farm out our work to AI, we always said to them, sugar, I lost my train of thought. Okay, let's back it up. Okay, so for years during that time span, that was the stance of all of us as professors as a whole. MFA, PhDs, we were all in agreement that we were to work collectively to discourage students from using Wikipedia. And if they were overwhelmed with using the research databases, they were allowed to use Wikipedia as a jumping off point. That was the stance, because students were overwhelmed by research databases. They always felt as though they were spinning in circles, chasing their tail. They weren't putting in good keywords, they weren't putting in good search terms. And so they get so frustrated that they want to go the easy route, which is Wikipedia. But we wanted to push students towards using those research databases, because there's credible sources there. There's not one thing that's in a research database that's not credible. So that's why we could trust that if a student was using something from EBSCOhost, that we didn't have to worry too much about whether the source was credible and whether it was balanced, because it was in EBSCO or it was in LexisNexis or whatever research databases that were available to students through the library. I would even bring my students, I would schedule something at the beginning of the semester because I taught writing courses. I taught what you probably would know as English 101. Now it's called college writing. It's English 100 college writing. At most universities and colleges, that's what it's called now. So, I would schedule an appointment at the beginning of the semester and bring them all into the library, and I would have a librarian show them how to use these databases, because this was information literacy. As writing instructors, that's what we should be doing, or should be a normal common practice, that all writing instructors, all writing professors schedule at the beginning of the term for their students a session at the library hosted by a librarian that can show them how to use those databases, so that they're not tempted to go the easy route and use something that is not credible. But now we have AI. And now we're finding out, and I just watched this. There's someone that I follow, I forget her name. She's a scientist, and she's just she explains complicated things in a very simple manner. Like, I just watched a video on her, and I'll look it up, or I'll put it down below. Okay, I'll put it down below, so you can follow her too. But she's a scientist. Normally, you see her at her lab station, with her hands in the gloves in the booth, and she's doing something, inside the booth, and she's explaining something like RDNA or something like that. And her last post, she explained what a perm is and what it does to your hair. Pretty cool. But another post that she did, she was talking about this increasing problem within peer reviewed journals, in which they are finding that a lot of peer reviewed work has been generated by AI. And even worse is that the peer reviewers who would sort of bless that article for publication, they're using AI on the article that's been submitted for the review, in order for them to. And she brought up a very valid point. How do we know what's real? If the person who's generating the article or creating the article is using AI to do it, and the people who would peer review and bless it are using AI to review it, where's the accountability? Why are we encouraging this? Why are we encouraging this retreat from critical thinking skills and actually putting work into a document? What happened to the pride that would come when a student would get a paper back and they put all their effort into it, and find out that they got a good grade, and they're being recognized for all the effort? That's gone. That seek for pleasure, for validation from the professor, is gone. Now we can argue the stick and carrot approach, blah 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 blah, and having these professors judge a piece of work, but hey, that's what we're there for. That's what we're hired to do. We're hired to take you, a raw student, and turn you into an academic writer in 15 weeks. That's what we're hired to do. And it ain't easy at all. And from my perspective, the reason why it's not, there are a couple of factors as to why it was difficult even when I was teaching, even right before I ended. It was getting more and more difficult, because I felt as though I had to stand on my head to get these students to pay attention and really understand why it's important for you to understand writing is an important communication tool. That should, I don't have to, I'm not saying it should be mastered, but you should have a firm grasp of it so that you can communicate once you're out in the real world. But here we have AI creeping in, and it's turning these students lazy. And even and to hear that professors, PhDs, who really used to look their nose down on a lot, right? They would sit on their perch in academia. Hey, listen, I'm not lost in the sauce. I'm not sipping from the Kool-Aid. I'm an academic. I will say this to my dying breath. All right, I am an academic, but I don't sip the academic Kool-Aid of looking down on people. I don't do that. Never did. Always been grounded, and I thank the military for that. But I digress. So we have professors now because, oh my gosh, it's so difficult to put together a 15-week syllabus that now they're turning to AI to grade papers and generate their syllabi. And where does it end? What's the sense in going to school if the students are going to use AI for their work and the professors are going to use AI for their tasks to measure and validate that work? So I guess this episode is sort of a rally cry, a call to arms, as it were, a call back to the simplicity of students spending time in a library, researching, discovering, uncovering, and using that information in a written document that is supposed to persuade any reader that the idea that they are discussing is valid, that their argument is strong, that they considered all sides of the issue that they are discussing in their paper. They have presented those opposing viewpoints in their paper, acknowledging their existence, acknowledging that this opposing viewpoint is valid up to a certain degree. But then here you come along as the owner of the work and say, this is where here are the weaknesses in my opponent's point of view, in my opponent's opinion. Here are the weaknesses. What happened to that? What's wrong with doing that the old fashioned way? Why do we want to outsource that to a tool? I guess it is technically, it is a tool. AI is a tool. Why would you let a tool do your thinking for you? Where do you come in all of that transaction, right? Because I hear from students all the time, I'm paying for this, I'm paying for this, I'm paying for this. Yeah, you are paying for it. You're paying to learn about something so that when you finish college, you can do it out in the field. So why would you outsource that if you paid for it? You're paying to go into a classroom, receive X amount of hours of instruction for the semester, only to turn around and not use that information at all, but instead let AI do it for you. Can we talk about a waste of money here? I hear all these students talking about, with the student loan crisis, and now everybody is, they're delinquent, they can't pay, they're stretched, they're this, they're that. But hey, to those students that are in debt right now, I feel you, all right? But you actually took out a loan and paid for something that had value. Okay, if that's any consolation to you. Because not up until the moment that this whole student loan crisis just became a I don't want to say an abomination because that's a bit strong. But ever since this became a hot mess express, right? People are like, I can't, I'm going to be paying for this up until the time I die. This is true. I mean, yes, unless you win the lotto, which is, what are the odds of that happening? But yeah, it's quite conceivable that you'll be paying for this up until the time you die. But there's all this back and forth about whether it's really worth it because you paid all this money, you took out all these loans, only to get out in the real world and find out there are no jobs for you. And what jobs are there for you? There's 200 other people competing. And I get that. And I also get the stories of people who are so strapped for cash that they take jobs that have absolutely nothing to do with their major. I get that as well. There is a price and a risk when you get your degree. That risk has always been there, it's nothing new, right? And when you get that education and you pay all that money, you're gambling on your future, right? It's a risk. You're gambling. And you want to do everything you can to sort of validate that the risk was worth it. But when you have crushing debt, it's very hard to see it that way. So getting back to, I'm getting off topic again, but getting back to the writing part of it and the critical thinking, it is so important. And I guess if I were to say who my audience is for this post, overall, I would say anybody, everybody, pay attention, right? Because this affects you. But if I were to say who my audience is, I would say it's for today's students. Okay. So I say to you, you are paying all this money to get an education. Your parents are helping you. Everybody's chipping in. You're hustling for scholarships just so you can be educated and hopefully have a piece of the pie, of this American pie that we know based on what's going on today. Getting a piece of that pie is slowly becoming all but impossible. But you're still in school. And the reason why you're still in school is because you're taking that risk. And you're hoping that by the time you graduate, things will shift. Right? Right? That's what you're hoping for. So you stay in and you battle through professors and cliques and financial aid and worrying about how you're going to get your meal and all of this stuff you have on your plate. So why would you cheat yourself by using AI for your work? You're paying for it. You're taking out loans. You're hustling for scholarships. You have family members who are chipping in. Why would you not allow yourself to experience it all in all its ugly glory, all its frustrating glory? Because why would you want to phone that in through AI if you're paying for it? And for the professors out there, I guess this would be another uh, audience that I'm appealing to, the call of arms. Higher education is under attack. Make no mistake. You know the dismantling of Department of Education. You see what they've done to the student loan program. You see what they've done to Harvard, Columbia, how they're squeezing all the other top 10 universities to fall in line. I understand the frustration and the pressure because now you have to deal with AI as well. You have to look through all those papers to make sure that the student actually put in the work. But what you cannot do is allow AI to do the tasks that you should be doing. You guide that student for the next 15 weeks. You should be the one shaping your syllabus, not AI. You should be taking all that you've learned. If you're a PhD, if you're a MFA like I am, you should be taking all that you have learned, all the things that you have practiced, all the stuff that you have read, all the things that you have done hands on. You should be using all of these things to shape your syllabus. You, not AI. So it's a two side of the fence kind of situation. So I'm doing a call to action for all of you, all of you, all of you. Stop being lazy. When I was teaching my son, my older son, I would always go to him and I'd complain and complain about teaching because it was so tough teaching these students writing because a lot of them came from high school thinking that they were really strong writers. And then when they come into college, university, they wind up getting remediated because they weren't as good as they thought they were when they were in high school. Now, let me say this about that. As 12 years teaching in higher education, I can tell you that there is a great difference between students of color who went to school in urban neighborhoods, between the non or the white students who came from suburban areas. I've never had to remediate the latter. I've always had to remediate the former. And that has been the case no matter where I've taught. And so it was always tough for me as an instructor, trying to get students to be interested, trying to get them to understand the importance of writing. This is not just, it's not just stringing words together and putting it in a paragraph and saying, okay, I'm done. That's not what writing is. Writing is an art, writing is a craft, writing is a skill. It's not something to be dismissed. We have come so far as a civilization, not as a society, as a civilization throughout millions. Since the beginning of time, from the time that Johann Gutenberg created the first printing press, communication has been key to us advancing as a civilization. The ability to print and disseminate information makes Johann Gutenberg the most influential person of our entire existence as a civilized society or a civilized civilization. We have Shakespeare because of Johann Gutenberg. We have Bibles because of Johann Gutenberg. We have Stephen Hawking's a brief discussion of time because of Johann Gutenberg. We had writing is a fundamental form of communication that everyone should have a firm possession of. Without the ability to communicate and be understood, we have chaos. Imagine if me as a professor in writing just vomited out nonsensical garbage. My students are not going to learn anything from that nonsensical garbage. And they're not going to be able to take anything and use it in their lives. See, that's the role of professors. We need to understand basically that we set the tone for what these students will be like after they graduate. And we set the example. They look to us because they are paying. They are paying. And so we, professors, we have a responsibility to stand against the last line of defense when it comes to this AI. If we do not realize that along with using AI, we are also jeopardizing our critical thinking skills. Because why should we critically think if we have AI to do it for us? If we lose our critical thinking skills, then we'll have a society of idiots. It'll be a true idiocracy. Shout out to Mike Judge, right? We will have an idiocracy. So I think what I'm going to cover for this episode, and I was thinking about this and I was thinking about this and I was like, and then I'm seeing these posts on not so much Instagram, because like I said, I have that fine tuned, but I see it on threads from people. Like this one dude, um, you know, he was struggling, and he was going back to school and he was, math was, and I completely, you know, sort of connected to his post in which he said, math is not his strong suit. It's been a while. He went back to school and he can't seem to pass this math test, right? So I said to him, I said, because I've been in higher ed, not just as an instructor or professor, but I've worked at three different major core areas of higher education. I've worked from the administrative side, I've worked from the student services side, and I've worked from the faculty side. So when dude posted this, excuse me, I said to him, did you go to student services and get a tutor in your subject? I mean, we all need help. I didn't see that you sought help. And he realized, he's like, yeah, I thought I can strengthen it on my own, but I'm realizing that, I need help. So I guess what I'm saying is for those students who feel as though they want to resort to AI because they're so much under pressure and they just want to shortcut it, I say, is that really the issue? Or is it you're finding it difficult for you to start this assignment? You don't know where to begin. Your professor didn't give you any kind of real guidance and you just want to like phone it in, but you're paying for it. Okay. So why are you phoning it in? You're paying to learn. Don't do that. Okay. Don't do that. So I guess what I want to impart, this is, I cannot speak for maths and I like putting the S at the end. Yeah. Call me bougie. I like calling it maths. I can't help you with maths, but I can help you with writing. And so I guess what I'm saying to students or you young folk, Gen Z, Gen A, or whatever the hell generation is in college nowadays, don't shortcut it. Don't phone it in. If your problem is having a rough start to a research paper, here's a tip. And this is what I did when I was a writing tutor for the University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut. Holla! I was a writing tutor there for 3 years. And the majority of students that I assisted, they were in social work. That was their major because University of St. Joseph used to be an all female college. Then it became a university and then they went co-ed. But when it was, and so it had a concentration in the social sciences and there were nuns and priests from the local uh, I'm sorry, I'm not a Catholic diocese. They were the ones that were overseeing University of St. Joseph. And so there would be nuns and priests that would teach classes there, but they were in the social sciences. So there was biology, there was social work, there was education, all these really great fields for women to enter into, right? And so a lot of the social work students, they have it the toughest. No, let me backtrack. I should not say that. But social work students, do not sleep on them because they have such a rigorous academic program that it's just right up there with psychology or nursing or anything like that. And so one of the things that social work students have to do is look for peer reviewed articles in journals. So that say they have a client with a particular issue and the social worker is trying to think outside of the box on how they can best approach this particular client, right? That's where peer reviewed journals come in, peer reviewed articles. You go on your database, you do a search for the issue at hand, and you find out other studies and other articles about that same issue, and then you take all that information, you distill it, you synthesize it, you analyze it, meaning you break it apart, and then you synthesize it, you put it back together, and then you come up with a treatment plan for your client, right? See what I'm saying? So yeah, social work students, don't sleep on them, because they their program is rigorous. But back to the one of the problems that they had when it came to doing a research paper, especially a literature review, which is a beast, by the way. Any one of you, you know about literature review papers, they are a beast. And so for social work students, for their literature review, they had to come up with a topic, draw something out of it that pertains to social work, research that topic, and then present 3 articles in their literature review, examining each article for their strengths and weaknesses in approach and methodology. And it, they were so much stuck that they were getting stressed out. And so, all right, let me tell a story. You know, I love to tell my stories. Where are we right now? Okay, we're just past 30 minutes. Let me tell you a story. Picture it. It was summer 2013. Yes, summer 2013. And Lisa got some summer work with the University of St. Joseph, because during the summer, they offered special courses. And for these courses, they needed writing associates. So I would be the writing associate for a particular social work course that's offered for the summer, a summer session. So it just so happened, and I'm pretty sure it's 2013, because I'm positive it wasn't 2014. But that was the summer, and now I'm doubting myself. But that was the summer, and it just so happened that right before class began, news broke of something really strange that went down in Miami. And some of you may want to probably are guessing what I'm about to talk about, right? So right before class, Newsbreak reports that there is a man on a Miami freeway, butt naked, tripping on bath salts, and eating the face of a homeless person. They had to shoot him dead because he wouldn't stop. The cannibal. They had to shoot him dead. You haven't heard peep about that whole aspect of it. It was a big to-do. And the homeless guy, he got face reconstructive surgery. It was horrible. But it just so happened to break before class. So that summer was so oppressive. And we were in a classroom that had no AC. I think they had put fans in the window because it was a really old building. And so the professor was rambling on and on and on and on. And between her rambling and the classroom and the heat, everybody was just so sluggish. And I seriously doubt anybody was listening to what was happening. And I could look around and I could tell. Now, if you know me, I love to shake things up a bit. So it was I was scheduled to speak to the class, introduce myself, because, I'm responsible to sit in each class, basically getting a free class, by the way, on I had a free class. And I was assigned to help these students with research and how to put it all together and how to craft their literature review. And so I stood in front of the class and I introduced myself, and, I talked about my background. And then I said, I know you guys, you struggle with finding ideas for your literature review papers. And I get that. It's very difficult to pull something out of thin air, right? Especially on something that you really don't know too much about. So this is what I suggest for you guys. And that's when I told the story of the cannibal on the butt naked cannibal on the Miami freeway. Everybody immediately woke up because you don't often hear someone in classroom talking about a cannibal. That just happened. That just happened. Everybody was on their phones looking. There was like, this is nuts. Yes, it is nuts. Right? But I said, here's this story right there, right in front of you. Tell me, as a social worker, what are the problems with this whole situation? Forget about the cannibalism. What issues do we have here? So what I did was I did a spidergram, a spider, yeah, it's a spider flow chart or spider diagram. That's it, a spider diagram or a visual diagram. Okay, and so I said, okay, here's the core, right? The core problem. Let's not say that the problem is cannibalism. All right, that's not the main core problem. What was going on between the person who was assaulting the other person, right? What pops out at you? So they said homelessness. Ah, there we go. So there's your center idea, right? Your main core idea is homelessness. Now, what are the factors that lead to homelessness? And that's when I drew one line going up, one line going out from the center, and one line going down from the center. Name 4 areas that affect homelessness, or 4 factors. One said drugs. Ah, there you go. Right? So it goes on and on and on using the spider diagram. And from there, students were able to have a better focus on what they were going to write about and study and research. And a lot of them appreciated that because I did it again. I was a professor on campus. You can request special services from where I worked. I was in special service. I was in student services in the writing center. Okay. And professors can request people from the writing center to come and do presentations on something that can help students. And so I want to say this was during a winter break or maybe the spring semester, because I remember it being gray and cold that day. So it might have been the spring semester. So it just so happened again, I knew I was going to do this presentation. So I said, let me find something funky and fresh that I can use as an example. It just so happens that right before I went and did my presentation, I came across an article in USA Today about this woman who, trying to remember, she passed away from HIV/AIDS because her partner did not reveal that he was HIV positive. And I think what had happened was that instead of taking responsibility, he killed her and blamed her for the fact that he had HIV. And I think she had 2 or 3 children on top of it. So I presented it to the class, right? And I said, here's this scenario. Again, what is the core, what issues can you, as a social worker, what issues can you draw from this that you may want to focus on, that's close to you, that you feel you want to address? Is it the interpartner violence? Is it the HIV and AIDS and this sort of assault on women when it comes to this diagnosis? Because oftentimes women lose their lives or they're assaulted because their male partner did not want to take responsibility for the fact that they might have been the one that did the infecting instead of the one being infected. So it got the students talking. They were like, okay, what about this? What about this? And so here I'm on the dry erase board and I'm creating this wonderful spider diagram, and they're grooving and they're grooving. And I said, okay, now we got this all worked out. We have our main core idea. We're going to explore this train of argument. So if it's homelessness, we're going to explore how drugs plays a role in that homelessness. From the drug situation, we're going to identify 3 factors that lead to that drug use. Okay, 1, sexual abuse. Oh yes, oh yes. 2, mental illness. Yep, 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 self-medication. Okay? So there you go. You have your main idea, you have the sub idea that branches off of that, and from there you have 3 contributing factors. So now what you're going to do is you're going to research how homelessness, drug use, and sexual abuse all play a role. Bada bing, bada boom, you got your paper. Now all you need to do is just create your search terms, okay? From that, plug those in and find those articles that address the path that you want to take when it comes to that research. Simple. It is that simple. So if you're ever stuck for an idea, regardless of whatever discipline you're in, pick up a newspaper, pick up a magazine. You will find an idea, and from there, create your outline. Now, spider maps are perfect for people who like to see things visually. And a lot of students, or a good majority of students, say, I'm a visual person. And this really helped me out because I can tweak this, I can fine tune it, yada, yada, yada. And then you have the people who like to sit down and like write it all out. Like me, that's me. I like to write it all out because that's how I've been doing it all these years. I'm not minimizing spider maps at all. They're wonderful spider diagrams or spider maps, but it's all about preference, right? So I'm reminiscing about all of this is just like bubbling up to the surface, and I find myself on threads sort of using that well of knowledge of experience in higher education and sort of like putting it out there, like the guy who wasn't doing well in maths and wanted to quit. I was like, dude, don't quit. Find a workaround, go get some help, but don't quit if this is what you want. Because he was like, should I leave and come back? Here's the problem with leaving and coming back. Sometimes you don't want to come back, especially if you let too much time pass by. That's why I always, it took me a long time to get my bachelor's degree. And that's because I was a full-time parent, a full-time employee. I had to balance those responsibilities with going to school. So it wasn't often that I can take 2 classes for the semester. It was 9 times out of 10, I took 1, but I never gave up. I kept going. All right. So as I was thinking about this, what I was going to do for this episode, I said, you know what? Let me break out some books that I used to assign to my students on writing. Well, not necessarily on writing. The books were on writing, but they were reference books. And when you're a professor, I don't know if they still allow you to do this, but it was really dope. If you were going to teach a class and you were considering like changing your assigned books for the semester, if you went to the publishing website and you gave them your academic your email address from your university or whatever, and you give them some information, and they'll ask you like, are you considering this for the next semester, da 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 da. And 9 times out of 10 I wasn't trying to get free reference books on writing. I don't need that, but that was my intention. So I would get from some free books from the publishers. And so we when I was writing tutor at the writing center at the University of St. Joseph, we recommended these reference books as it pertains to writing. We did. And what was really interesting about the University of St. Joseph, and I hope they still do this, was because you could not graduate unless you demonstrated writing proficiency. So before you graduated, you had to submit three research papers, as part of your portfolio. And they had to be different. They couldn't all be the same. They had to demonstrate different things. And at the writing center, we would be the ones to read and evaluate them at the end of the year. And we would basically, had that student's life in the palm of our hands, because if they didn't pass the writing portfolio, that means they had to go back to the drawing board and get it done if they wanted to graduate on time. So we always advised them, like, don't wait until your senior year to tackle this. Because if you think that you're going to walk across the aisle without passing your writing portfolio, you got another thing coming. So, we sort of, when we saw like deficiencies and deficiency in writing, we would often make these recommendations for these you know textbooks, for them to use actively to improve their writing, and continue coming to the writing center for assistance. And people sort of scoff and like, oh, writing centers, they don't blah, 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 blah. No, 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 no. Mm-mm. You don't get to discount something you've never tried. Don't go by someone else's, experience. Find out for yourself whether it's effective, because every person is different. What is one man's meat is another man's poison. So you can't go by someone else's experience. You need to go into that writing center or into that student center, sit down with a tutor, and be focused in what you need help with, right? Because if you come in all scattered brained, then of course it's not going to be helpful for you. How can the writing tutor help you if you don't even know what kind of help you need? Make sense? Ah, basta. So this is one of, you can tell, see how much I use this thing? Like, it's raggedy. Like, look at the pages. If you, I don't know with the lighting, but look at how raggedy the pages are. And I've held on to this. I can't remember. I think I got this. It's even got dust on it, right? I've had this, I think, since 2012. And The Little Seagull Handbook by Richard Bullock and Francine Weinberg. It's small, it's compact. You know how I feel about small books, putting them in pocketbooks and taking them with you. Not that you would take this anywhere, but in all the textbooks that you have to lug around campus, excuse me, I don't know why I said campus that way. All the books you got to lug around on campus, like, it's nice to have something that's soft colored, that's not soft covered, that's soft colored. What is that? Soft covered, that doesn't weigh too much in your bag as you're, trying to get from one class to the other on campus. So the great thing about this is that it had tips in it on how to create an argument, and how to edit your paragraphs, and revising, and all of those good things that come with being a really good and a good and writer, and one that's realizes that this is, is this, take this seriously, right? So what students often didn't understand when it came to research papers is that you're making an argument. It's not about just plopping a bunch of words together or having a 5 paragraph essay. It's about your ability to argue a subject critically, fairly, and ethically. Well, I guess fairly and ethically would be the same thing, but I would like to think ethics is, it does deal with being fair, but it's also about having a moral code that guides you in your decision to be fair. That's why I consider them separate. So I wanted to really emphasize for students that if I don't believe your argument, how much effort did you put into it? And I argue all the time that any information that's disseminated out into the universe is an argument. And it's just it's a degree of an argument, right? Even news programs are an argument. because they are covering a story and introducing certain details about it to convince you or to get you to respond, whether it was horrific or whether it was wonderful. And it's part of rhetoric, the use of certain words to generate a response. It's the art, the bombastic of words, right? An argument is rhetoric. Anything that you put to paper, even if it's information purposes only, it's still an argument to a certain degree because you are communicating the importance, why this announcement is important, why you are putting out this bulletin. Even if it's just an FYI, you are still making an argument. So that's what is covered here in the Little Seagull Handbook, that whole discussion, how to craft a strong argument. All right. Now, it also talks about how to do how to do annotated bibliographies. They're very important. I would argue that for a regular schmegula paper that's in college writing, right? That's the entry level mainstream. I call that mainstream because there are classes for remediation, and then you go mainstream for courses that actually count towards your degree. Because here's another thing that I want to impart on you. Now, this is very, and you parents, you need to pay attention to this because you probably don't know. But if your son or daughter does not have a good score on their SAT or ACT or whatever exam they took, standardized exam, if their scores for the SAT for verbal and written are not that great, what happens is this. They are allowed to do a challenge essay, Johnny on the spot. They are not allowed to take it home, nothing like that. It is timed. And so they go in and they take this Johnny on the spot. No prep work. They're giving a writing prompt and they have to write the writing prompt. Based on that, based on what you do, what the student does, it's submit they do the Johnny on the spot, and then a bunch of English professors get together in a room and review all of these essays that were done for that examination. And they make the determination based on what you wrote, whether you can go to college writing or you need to go to remediation classes. Now, those classes you have to pay for and they don't count towards your degree. I want to say that again. Any remediation classes that you take do not count towards your degree, but you have to pay for them. Now, at the community college level, that happens quite a bit, in which students have to take that Johnny on the spot essay exam. And based on the result of that exam, it will determine whether you are allowed into English 101 or you have to go to remediation classes and fight your way up to English 101. That's how it works. Okay. So if you are, how can I put this? Do not come into college thinking that what you did in high school is going to fly in college. Just because you did very well on the SAT, that just means that you have a good sense, you have a good, firm understanding of the mechanics of writing, because that's what SATs are testing you on. They are testing you on the mechanics of writing. All right. So if you do well on the SAT, you absolutely have the mechanics down right. But knowing the mechanics means that when it comes time for you to perform, it should be fairly easy for you. There should be no struggling. So they say. right? And for the students who have to fight their way up to college writing, um, this can be this whole coming into the class expecting to hit the ground running and stay running for 15 weeks can be a bit overwhelming. Just want to put that out there. So, forgot where I was with that. Oh, annotated bibliographies and blah, 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 blah. Okay. So when it comes to annotated bibliographies, those normally when you're in upper level courses, like the 300 level, and say you have a capstone course, yeah, that's when, you may be asked to do annotated bibliography and stuff like that, the really upper level stuff. But when it comes to college one-on-one courses, um, you don't often, we don't often teach annotated bibliographies. We'll teach how to format one, but as far as annotating it, no. That comes, I think, from my experience, in later courses where you learn the importance of an annotated bibliography and what it means towards your work as it relates to your work or whatever it is that you're writing. So here, there's some tips on doing research, how to get those keywords to get the information that you're looking for so that you're not chasing your tail, how to evaluate those sources. You see that here? So that's always been an issue when it comes to writing, being able to find your sources and then evaluating them to make sure that they're valid and can be used for your argument. So that's another thing. And then we get into citation. All right. Modern language associative format is the easiest of all the citation formats out there. And because I've taught them all, I've tutored in them all. APA is the most persnickety associated, excuse me. I just glitched. Did you hear me? Associated. No, this is not AI. Okay. APA is the American Psychological Association. Okay, there we go. APA style. So it's got 3 different citation, like sort of like short reference guides for each of the heavy hitters that come with citing in research papers. So this has MLA, APA, has Chicago Manual of Style, which is like basically the Bible, in the writing, in the writing and publication world. Okay, Chicago Manual Style is the Bible. It is the Bible. And then CSE, which is the Council of Science Editors format, that's basically for engineers, anybody, the discipline of engineer and the sciences, the natural sciences, the earth sciences, whatever citation formats that they would use would probably be CSE because there's citation formats are related to the discipline. So modern language association format, they're basically for the humanities. You have APA, American Psychological Association format. That's basically for the psychologists, the sociologists, the social workers, anything that has to deal with human behavior, all in that discipline. They would use that format. CSC, like I said, for engineers or architects, if they were to present a paper for whatever reason, they would either use Chicago Manual Style or they may use CSC as their citation format. Especially when it comes to peer-reviewed articles, you have to have a citation format. So the other thing that it has in here is sort of grammar stuff, right? And here's something I've always, and students are like, do I really need to know grammar? Yes. Yes. Because I tell students, I will, in any class, every class that I taught, every class that I taught had to deal with writing, I reviewed grammar. Grammar is very important. Punctuation is very important. Punctuation, the wrong type of punctuation can change the meaning of a sentence. It could either be in certain instances, it has been the reason why a lawsuit had to move forward because the punctuation wasn't where it was supposed to be, and it changed the meaning of the sentence and made it so that the sentence needed an interpretation in order for it to be applied, especially if it's in a law or a ruling. So that's why I say that grammar is very important. I always refer to Schoolhouse Rock, an excellent resource to learn the grammar and understand its place in a sentence. I've always reviewed punctuation. What's a comma splice? What's a run on, how to avoid run on sentences? Our friend, Mr. Semicolon, who is the dopest punctuation out there. No, no, no. Seriously. I love, I love the semicolon. You know why? Because the semicolon both stops and starts a sentence at the same time, right? It's that dot, dot, dot with a semicolon, right? Because look what punctuation makes up a semicolon: a period and a comma, right? The period is the full stop. If you've ever read the book Eat, Shoots, and Leaves, comma is the period is the full stop. The comma is the half stop. So here you have this punctuation that has a full and a half stop. Hey, that's a badass punctuation, if I do say so myself. So I thought it was always important, because, and especially when it came to those horrible words that students are so lazy that they don't even stop to think about the differences in the words. And you know what I'm talking about: there, and there. Those words, accent and accent, how they get those two confused. Or, the difference between effect and affect, when to use that. I used to have a very tawdry way of explaining the difference between that. Maybe if you ask me nicely, I will show how I taught people the difference between effect and affect. Always got someone blushing or someone smiling. So that's, this is one of my books. I always had it for them to, as part of a required textbook for the course. Always, 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 because I don't want them. I always wanted them to have the source with them as opposed to having to dig around for it online. Purdue Owl, by the way, excellent resource. Purdue Owl. So this was one, oh my gosh, I got so much dust on this. Hold on one second. Oh my days. This is what happens when you keep books in boxes. Woo, woo, oh my, okay. Whoop, come on, come on, come on. There we go. So this was one of the ones that we used to recommend at the Writing Center. They Say, I Say, The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing, Gerald Graft and Kathy Birkenstein. So this was also, I think, yeah, because both these books, this one and this one, they're from the same publisher, which is W.W. Norton. And I like their pocket size, a good portion, not all of them, but, they're basically this size and very nice covers. And so this one, it talks about, okay, so I'll just read from the back. So this book demystifies rhetorical moves, tricks of the trade that many students are unsure about. It's reasonable, helpful, nicely written, and hey, it's true. I would have found it immensely helpful myself in high school and college. All right. So, uh, it's not like a text, it's a textbook, but, it's got visuals in here to reinforce. I think I just saw something from Family Guy in here. Certain things to make you think about writing as the mechanics of it, right? Because there's so many different aspects. Like when we were critiquing work for the writing portfolio at the University of St. Joseph's, we had categories that we judged the work by, or we evaluated the work by. One of them was mechanics. Does the person have a grasp of, of avoiding syntax and things of that nature? We looked for stuff like that. Grammar, spelling, all of that falls into mechanics. But also in here is sort of like rhetoric, and how that plays a role in how you craft your message. Like, okay, let's get into it. When it comes to making an argument, there are three different uh, aspects or characterizations or character. Let's try this again, because it's been a minute since I've been in front of the classroom. Like I said, I stopped teaching in 2021. Okay, so there are three different characteristics. Three different characteristics to persuasion. First one is logos, that's logic. Second one is ethos, that's ethics or moral values. Third one is pathos, emotion. So when it comes to putting together an argument, you use these three characteristics of persuasion, and depending on the audience and the subject matter, you're going to use one of these more than the other. So if you're writing an article that's scientific in nature, you are going to have more logic, more facts in your writing. You're going to focus on that. If you're trying to persuade an audience about, for example, starving in Gaza, the children and adults that are starving in Gaza right now, you're going to use pathos to persuade the reader that this is an issue. So pathos in relation to the crisis, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that would entail showing pictures of starving children, of hearing from people on ground zero in Gaza and what they're experiencing every day, right? That's pathos. So this book, They Say, I Say, sort of touches on that a little bit. Here it talks about to move from a general claim to a specific idea, because oftentimes students, like, they want to do broad, but they're unable to drill it down. So that's what this book does. It helps, gives you tips on how to drill it down and make it more focused. All right. Now, this is sort of like a Bible that I've seen used. I've never used it myself. And it's, again, from W. Norton. And the reason why is because it's, I think, oh, wait a minute. I may have ordered the online version, because the great thing about these, the great thing about these publishers is that they understand that the textbook cost has gotten out of hand. So what they've done is they started offering online versions. You given a key at the beginning of the semester, and then you can access it online, and it's cheaper. So I think I may have. Oh, look what it does to it. Changes the color. Okay, I got to hold it back here, because you see what happens when I bring it close? Everything turns red. Isn't that something? That's science in action, y'all. Okay, so this book, The Norton Field Guide to Writing, by Richard Bullock, and again is published by W. Norton. Okay, all right. So this is, we assign this to the students, and it's a guide. It's about it again. It talks about all the things that you should be practicing when it comes to writing, especially academic writing. All right, this basically addresses academic writing, but I mean, it's not something that you could not use after you graduate, because writing, especially if you want to go into copywriting or whatever, you can, this might help you a little bit, especially if you're given a particular task, writing task, and you're like, ooh, well, let me think about this for a second. This might help you out, this guide, right? So that's why I've never, when it comes to certain textbooks, let me tell you people something. I know that, you want to give it, and I'm sorry for rubbing my nose for whatever reason, all this flotsam. I'm not a drug user. This is allergies because my ceiling fan, I have it running and I need to clean the fan. And I think that's a lot. I don't think my plants are having relations. I don't think that's it. I think it's coming from the fan. In any event. Woo! So, um, so that I forgot my train of thought again. Anyway, got my train of thought. So embarrassing. But so that I guess let me start on a new train of thought. So now I remember. So when it comes to these textbooks, like I know that it's really, really tempting to just sell them back because you want to get some of your money back. But there are certain textbooks that you really should hold on to and not try to sell back because it's not just for that class that the book is going to help you. You're going to be having research papers beyond writing, college writing. So don't be so quick, like this one or this one, don't be so quick to sell them back. This one, yeah, okay. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. But again, I challenge you to reconsider before you sell it back because, like I said, you're going to have other classes in which you'll have to do a research paper, and these reference books are going to help you, especially this one. If you're, always find out what citation format your professor wants. They should tell you automatically, I want MLA or APA. Rarely does a professor ask for CSE unless it's one of those science or STEM classes, I should say STEM classes, science, technology, engineering, and math. They are the ones that will probably use CSE, but still, this is one of those things where beyond the class you should hold on to because depending on the class you may be asked to do a particular uh, style format, and it's all here. All four of the heavy hitters are all in this one book, so don't be so quick to sell it back. I know that there are websites online that if you give them the information, they will automatically format that entry for you. And I used to discourage my students from doing that. But, nowadays, when it now here's where for once, oh, wow. Here for once, this is where I believe that it's okay to use AI to help you with with your citations for your works cited or your bibliography, depending on your format or your references page, right? Because even as a writing tutor, there was always this one source that would require multiple people to sit down and figure out how to format it for the works cited page. So if you can use AI to take the guesswork out of how to format your entry for the source that you used in your paper, go forth and sin no more, my child, right? But it's always nice to have this reference so that if there's any doubt or you're like, wait, I don't think that's right, you have a reference to go to, right? Instead of relying on AI. Because AI is not the end all and be all of it. Because understand this, people, AI, the information that's out there, that's the information that AI uses is they're taking it from the internet because it's free. Problem with that is there's a lot of untrue things and incorrect things that are on the internet that AI is grabbing and using to generate whatever it is you're asking it to do. And people like me are being recruited or being hired to train the AI to do it right. So If these companies are using people like me to validate their AI, how trustworthy is the AI if they need people like me to validate it and correct it and help minimize the hallucinations or the incorrect information or the bias that still exists in AI? That is a huge problem. Again, because it's pulling information from the internet along with all the bias that's on the internet. All right. So that's why it's very important that there be a human element to whatever paper you decide to write, or not decide to write, any paper that you're assigned to write. It is very important that there be a human element to your work. It is very important that you engage your critical thinking skills. It is very important that you take the effort to do the research, to find out how to find sources to support your argument. This is all a part of us being thinking, feeling beings, that ability to have that creative, to think critically about an issue. It is essential, essential for us as a civilization that we not lose that. Okay? All right, I'm done preaching. Hi, how are you? How you doing? Every day is something new. And I get that. It's just, and it's sort of discouraging also, because you feel like sometimes you're on an uphill battle for certain things. Everybody's going through something right now. I see it on threads. I see it on social media everywhere. So I guess the only thing I can say is that there is a concept in Buddhism, and it discusses impermanence. Impermanence, just as it implies, is that nothing is permanent. Things must change. They have to change. They cannot stay that way forever. How long they stay in that state depends on a number of factors, but it will change. And I think we're in the first 6 months of this administration, and it's been every day. It seems like there is a design to break us and to that point where we rebel, the way we did with the British. And so I, to and it seems as though the world has gone crazy. The media reports every little thing, and it just heightens this anxiety we are all experiencing. But I, whenever I sort of freak out and start worrying about stuff, I just remember what's going on right now will not last forever. It will eventually change because it has to change. That is the nature of the universe. Nothing ever stays the same. So every morning I get up and I say, whatever situation I'm in right now, it will change. It will not stay the same. Will it change for the better? How the hell should I know? I just know that it will change. So that consoles me. And I hope that consoles you as well. That whatever we're experiencing right now, it'll change. Could it get worse? Sure. Could it get better? Absolutely. But it will change. Okay? That gets me through the day. That gets me through my difficulties. I'm worrying about tomorrow. Shouldn't be worried about tomorrow. Should be worried about today. Today is what matters. Tomorrow, yesterday is already taken care of. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Can deal with what's going on right now. I'm going to clean because I won't. I keep doing that, and it's so distracting to me too. I know it's distracting to you. All right. I hope I didn't have lipstick on my teeth, because this lipstick, I love it, but it does transfer onto my teeth sometimes. Or I should say this lip stain. So let's do our mantra. Oh, but you know what? Before I let you go, right? Wow, this is the longest I've ever done. And I'm going to wrap it up because my phone is dying. That's how long I've been talking. I didn't realize I was going this long. All right, so let's do our mantra. I was going to talk about something, but I'll just let it go. Let's do our mantra, okay? All is well. Everything is working for my highest good. From this experience, only good will come. I am safe. Namaste. Until next time. Bye.